My recent experience was, working as a Scrum Master. I just love the idea of being a team facilitator and making sure I get to coach the team a little bit on Scrum values and Scrum methodology, and I get to remove impediments. So, my day started out by, being in the daily stand-up, and that's a 15 minutes meeting again, like we talked in the lecture. I go around and I say, okay, let's just go around and answer the 3 questions. What did you do yesterday? What are you going to focus on today? And do you have impediments? And we go around and I'm actually focused on hearing how everybody is doing, and if there's an impediment, I'm actually making a list of impediments so that I can make it visible, or I can work with a team member to go out there and resolve that impediment. I've also been in an environment where people didn't want to answer those 3 questions. So one of the things that I did is I did something called appreciative inquiry. So the question, instead of asking what did you do yesterday, what we said is, what are you going to focus on today? Are we in track to meet our sprint goal? And do you have any impediments? So that's a little bit more indirect, and people felt and resonated with those questions. Sure. So you can run your daily stand-up that way too. So that was really well. And then after that, I go about and I work with the developer to remove those impediments. Let's say they don't have some kind of data for testing, or if they need some servers, or if they need to talk to another team member for certain, I would facilitate those meetings and whatever the team needed. I would facilitate the sprint planning, where a team plans for the iteration or the sprint. And these are the things that we want to get it done, and this is our sprint goal. I facilitated that. So I would invite all the necessary people in the room. I would even go and ask the stakeholder to come in the planning, or if we need any kind of clarification. And I would make sure that we had talked about the sprint goal at the end of the sprint planning.
Excellent. Yeah, and I think that's one really cool thing when I was working in some agile projects, that when the Scrum Master hears that roadblock or that impediment, as you're in there and people are kind of talking about it, you don't usually, it doesn't come out. It's not like, oh, I have this problem, I can't move forward. It's, oh, I'm running into a challenge with this. Right? And then that Scrum Master I've had in the meeting say, actually, hey, let me talk to you after this real quick. I know somebody that you can talk to that might be able to give you some assistance, right? And they're just removing that and just helping that team continue to drive forward and not be stopped by anything.
Yeah, I like that. This is why there's a need for a Scrum Master, because, again, we have a 2-week iteration or 3 weeks, right? Team is so focused on getting those stories done that sometimes the impediments might, this task switching. So it's good to have somebody who can kind of facilitate and resolve those impediments. And he's thinking in a way where, what are some of the challenges that team is having? What are some of the ongoing impediments? Somebody really has the connection and is thinking in a very resourceful way for team to get going. And team is focused on developing and producing end-to-end working software.
Yeah, and you talked a little bit about how the Scrum Master is facilitating both the daily stand-ups as well as the sprint planning meeting. What about sprint review and retrospective and stuff like that? Are they doing the same thing there?
Yeah. Let's go to sprint review. So sprint review is a meeting where you review your sprint. What did we do in this sprint? Again, this is not perfect product. Sometimes you have a plan and there might be a few stories that are not done. It's totally okay. In the sprint planning...
Well, it's not always okay.
So in the sprint review...
It's okay there.
Yes. Well, the team is learning, right? Initially, they estimate too many things, and Scrum Master...
We always overcommit, right?
I know that the team is not going to finish this, but I'm not saying anything. I want them to learn, right? So it's okay. So I facilitate the sprint review, and I even invite some of the stakeholders or external customers there. If we need some feedback, or if we need to do an informal, here's what we have, right? In that meeting, we're kind of reviewing the progress compared to our product backlog, and what do we need to change in the product backlog based on what we have completed. And maybe we're doing re-estimating of some of these stories and moving some of these stories to next sprint. So we're doing those things in the sprint review. And then the retrospective is one of my favorite meetings to facilitate. In the retrospective, as a Scrum Master, I'm sending out calendar invites for everybody in the team, making sure everybody can attend that meeting. Having a space, and having an open space where a team can actually, not a loud space, but a quiet space, a nice meeting room where people can actually talk about what happened in this sprint. And really facilitate in a way where, some of the team members are not talkative and others are really talkative and optimistic. And usually sometimes they actually take over the conversation and they blast the others with ideas, and it's almost overwhelming sometimes, right? So what I do is whenever we are in that retrospective room, I am actually going around and I'm facilitating, okay, we're gonna actually start, and here's sticky notes. Why don't you just write down things in those 3 columns? What went well, what didn't go well, and what do we want to improve? And I'll give them 5 minutes to think about it, right? So that they have time to actually think about what those items. And then I'll collect those things and I'll actually post it on the wall. And I'll say, okay, well, this is the overall team sentiment. This is how we did in this iteration. Like, fine, some of the things that might have gone wrong, so I address the elephant in the room and make it less awkward. I go around and say, okay, well, Tim, you said this, like, why don't you tell us more? Like, what are you actually feeling? And Max, what about you? What were your challenges, and why did you think this was something that we want to improve on? What's the actual pain point? So facilitating those conversations, it's really fun for me.